as recruiters, we have to know why they're great on paper. And then we also have to articulate why they were great on the phone. And if you can't do that in a bulleted paragraph, you're not going to make it. So again, going back to the fundamentals is where I think people fail, because there's all these new shiny tools that swears they'll do it better, faster, easier. And we shouldn't be thinking about us fighting the tools. We should be thinking about us fighting ourselves, just not being really good at it.
Hi, I'm Kortney Harmon, Director of Industry Relations at Crelate. This is the Full Desk Experience's Industry Spotlight Series. Welcome back to another episode of the Full Desk Experience. I'm your host, Kortney Harmon, and this is part 2 of our special conversation with Brianna Rooney. She's the renowned entrepreneur, executive coach, and public speaker that, honestly, we had an amazing conversation. In the last episode, we heard more about Brianna's incredible origin story, how she founded multiple successful firms, and she's really known as the Millionaire recruiter. So in the second half of our talk, we're going to dive deeper. We're going to unpack some more from Brianna's insights and vision into what she does with her own firm in the tech industry and see her predictions for the future of our industry. She has such a unique and valuable perspective to share. So let's dive in to Brianna's talk for the Full Desk Experience. Thanks for joining. Let's talk about major shifts. We're going to talk about your industry specifically. What are some major shifts you've observed in your industry over the past year?
Yeah, a major shift, well, besides all the layoffs and people thinking that they don't need recruiters, that's been interesting. I would say the major shift that I'm actually happy to see is that on job postings for like recruiters and TA leaders and stuff like that, they're actually now asking for people with agency experience. I think that for a long time, agencies, like internals and externals, were like kind of like at war. And I mean, I myself have said this, so I'll put myself under the bus here. I've always said that people go internal because they couldn't hack it external. And I see very differently now. Maybe because I'm so brilliant at age 40. But the bottom line is everybody works differently. Some people really get off by commission. Some people shut down. That doesn't mean that they can't do their job really well. But I will say that agencies do care about different things than internals care about. And I kind of got hit with that really hard a few months ago when I did a very interesting kind of contingency meets RPO gig. Very interesting. I won't totally tangent on that. But essentially, I got to sit in their internal seat, even though I was external. They didn't have anybody. And it was actually quite a big organization to not have anybody. So that was like its own separate challenge. But I got to sit there and really see from an internal seat for the very first time in my entire career. And I got to see how they care about things so differently than externals do. So I was still able to do my recruiter screens in about 15 to 20 minutes, but I got very different information than I would if I was doing an external gig. And so I got to see why, because I got lots of questions directly from the team, as opposed to maybe from the TA person, or maybe they bitched about it somewhere else, I was responsible for certain questions. And so it made me like look differently. And so I think that once you realize, when you're seeing this shift, you're realizing that internal and externals, we are the same. It's kind of like how everyone should have been a waiter or waitress.
Yep.
But it's like, yeah, it's just external. We probably have more grit and resilience because we have to survive. Whereas the survivals isn't different, but we're still doing the same job. We just perhaps move and think differently. But that doesn't mean you can't train them, otherwise. So I think that's the giant shift, which is super interesting. Another shift is, and which I'm also happy about, is there's a lot more sharing. So
Elaborate.
because the recruiting world took a big hit, because people got caught with their pants down, not doing biz dev, they were like in trouble. And now they become a little bit desperate. So what do desperate people do? They reach out to all these different people, right? So, but what I like about how that happened is now people are sharing candidates, sharing clients. It's more of an interesting marketplace. And so now we're having like trusted partners. I mean, even myself, I just did a deal with one of my old employees, and it's like, that felt good. It feels good to split and share. I mean, the recruiting industry is still a massive moneymaker. It's just we're seeing money differently, and maybe it's a little harder to get, but it's still there. And so I think the sharing and collaborating is a really cool thing.
So many things I want to go in so many different directions.
Yeah, and I totally didn't even finish like my journey like that I was supposed. I just couldn't. I'm so bad. I tangent.
It's okay. I love it. I love where it's going. As a coach, obviously in this industry, you see a lot of things, what people are doing wrong, what people are doing right. I want you to talk about maybe one industry. I only want you to do one. I know you could do a bunch. One
Okay.
industry practice that you think needs to be completely reimagined.
People are not thinking like an owner.
Ooh.
So maybe because I've been an owner for so long, I don't
Yep.
know. But recruiters need to think about either they're the hiring manager or they're the CEO, because that tender loving thought care doesn't seem to be there. So, for example, if I want, let's say, I'll use Pinterest because Pinterest has still not been my client, and they really need to be. I'm going to get them one day. So close. So Pinterest, I want Pinterest to be my client, right? And I see their job description, and I have this person. But what I should be able to do as a recruiter is I should be able to read between the lines and know what questions my candidates will have based off of that job description. And if I think like that, then guess what? I'm going to ask Pinterest those questions in anticipation that my candidates will have those same exact questions. So when you think like a hiring manager, when you see the gaps that they probably have, then I think you can do better. And so this is how like you have to would reimagine stuff, because I would say a lot of recruiters have trouble pitching candidates to companies and pitching companies to candidates. So you have to sit in two seats. So one, you got to think of the hiring manager and owner, right? But then on the other side, you have to think like a candidate. So if this was your job, or this is your job interview, what would you want? What would you need? And if you're not doing that on both sides, I think you're totally failing. And we're not just, in my opinion, we don't get paid to send resumes. And I think recruiters are still thinking like that. A good example of this, sorry to throw someone under the bus here, but so let me think of a different industry. But I had, they do accounting, right? And so it's like I had this resume. I'm like, hey, give me your best candidate right now. I want to see your best candidate, share screen this candidate. They're like, all right, cool. So he was really excited to do that. Here's my best candidate. I go, great. Why is this candidate different than this other person? And all he did was tell me about how great she was on the phone. He couldn't articulate it on paper why this person was so great. And here's the thing, as recruiters, we have to know why they're great on paper, and then we also have to articulate why they were great on the phone. And if you can't do that in a bulleted paragraph, you're not going to make it. So again, going back to the fundamentals is where I think people fail, because there's all these new shiny tools that swears they'll do it better, faster, easier. And we shouldn't be thinking about us fighting the tools. We should be thinking about us fighting ourselves, essentially, just not being really good at it.
I love that. I worked with MRI Network. I was one of their trainers, and we did new owner development. So anybody coming into new franchise development, they had to come to training with us. And we did, like, you had to defend your impact player. Like, you brought one to training after 12 weeks, and I had their resume and a job order, and I quizzed the crap out of them, but you didn't have it in front of you. And it was like literally a test, but just how well do you know how to defend and know your person and what they can do versus the transactional. So often it's like, well, here you go. Like, it's a transactional. And I love that you talked about that, because that was one of my favorite things that we did.
That's really fun. And it's funny, people don't like role playing. And I also think that is a huge mistake. Huge.
I love it. And it makes you uncomfortable, but it's a good prepared uncomfortable. Whether it's your top performer and your other people are listening, especially in a remote world where so many people are remote, you're not a bullpen anymore. You're not hearing your like best people like respond to resistance, but maybe you put them on the spot and it's like, okay, maybe the CEO, like you haven't ran a desk in a while. Tell me how you'd respond to this. But they get to hear a different perspective and a different approach. And I think those things are game changers.
Yeah. So every single time someone would have an offer, they would have what I called an offer buddy. So even me, okay. So if I got an offer, and plus I ran full desk for a very long time, almost all the way up to I sold. I remember that moment when I walked away and I went into my office. I cried for a whole week. But and by the way, I run full desk now. So I'm like completely back to full desk and I absolutely love it. And it's a new thing for me. It's probably about like 4 or 5 months that I've been back. And I love every little second of it. But anyways, but we'd have an offer. And so the way that we would do that is I would talk about like, here's the offer, here's the thing. And then the offer buddy would be like, what's the problem? Do you think do you think it's going to close? What's the percentage wise? Do you think it's going to close? If it doesn't close, where is this person going? And as a recruiter, if you are surprised by someone not accepting an offer and then in return don't know where they're going, fail twice. Like you have to know. And I think a lot of people, sorry to tangent on this one, but a lot of people listen to what they want to hear. They don't listen to understand. Right. And so, I mean, very easily you are like, oh my God, my person's accepting. I go, great. So are they signing today? Oh, no. They said they need like a week. What do they need a week for? You just told me they were ready to go. So I would make them get back on the phone. I go, nope. I need to know why they're not accepting. They're like, no, they are. No, they're not. Now I need to know why. I need to know what's wrong because there's always something wrong. And here on the other side of the coin is people don't want to deliver bad news. So the candidate might like you. They might have even liked the company. And they sure as shit don't want to tell you on the phone that they're not accepting that thing that you just spent a whole lot of time on. Because essentially, they know how we get paid. They know that if they don't accept the job, we don't get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to deliver that news? Nobody.
It's true. That's very true. And you can talk just specifically about yours right now in your industry. How has candidate behavior changed? Have you noticed any recent change? Because hiring processes are different, people act different. You just talked about counter offers, all the things. What changes or what has changed in candidate behavior in the past year?
Okay. I love that you're talking about this. And for some reason, I'm getting money chills. But what we've seen recently is recruiters haven't felt the love from companies. Oh, but we feel the love from candidates. They love us again, and they love us even more than maybe they used to. So candidates want you. They want to talk to you. I've actually been very surprised how much they want to talk to me. Because before, I got really good at getting an intake via email because no, they never wanted to get on the phone with me and like urgency, urgency, urgency. I don't want someone else to send them. And I don't want them to get booked on interviews. So I have to get their intake. So I actually was getting really good at placing people I never spoke to because they wouldn't give me the time.
Crazy.
So I would call, I would leave messages, I would text, and guess what? They only responded to emails or text. So I just got really good at it. Anyways, now everyone will send their resume and be like, what time can I talk to you? And I was like, this is great. So I have been spending, again, the same kind of time, 15, 20 minutes, depending, like if I see a lot of potential for this person, or if we just happen to connect and, you always want to help, right? I'll spend a little more time with them. So in my mind, and this might sound good or bad, I don't know, but I have what I call charity calls. So I like to give myself 3 a week tops because I like to help and sometimes it hurts me not to help. Like I feel like I gotta help this person. So if the person feels coachable to me, I even might on the phone with the candidate walk them through how their LinkedIn or resume appears to me. And what they're missing and where they're missing the mark. And so I'll maybe spend like 5 more minutes or whatever it needs, to go over that. And I think that that's been going a long way. I've been getting a lot more referrals recently where normally, so I'm very used to, I don't know about you when you had your agency, I'm very used to paying for referrals. I pay $2,000 for every successful referral. I'm really open about it. But now I haven't even had to drop that at all. I'm like, hey, do you have anyone you want to refer? Sure. Now I'm really good at like getting 3 referrals per person. Like, hey, give me your friends. Hey, how's your company doing? Oh, doing layoffs, great. Pass your friends over. Let me help them out. So I think that the candidates have shifted for sure. However, I do think there are always going to be those bad seeds. For example, I have to just share this story because I almost wanted to share it, but I'm like, look, I'm not into that, but I'm going to share it here for a second. This person goes, I'm not interested. I only want transparency. And I was like, what? Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm not going to send you a novel, because nobody will read that. I said I was just trying to provoke a conversation, and here's what I want for you. And so I spent a little extra time, right? I said, here's what I want, da 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 da. And I even said, like, look, I know you just told me that you prefer remote. This is 2 times a week. I don't know, I feel like there's an exception to every rule. Just want to let you know it's 2 times a week. You know what he did? He messaged me back and goes, wow, good one. Looks like you don't listen. And he completely blocked me on LinkedIn. And I was like, wow, you're in a really bad mood. So there's always going to be that shit, right? And so this just happened a couple days ago, why it's fresh, but like, what are you going to do? Like, what am I going to do? To go post this shit on LinkedIn and get mad about it and rage just like candidates do about us ghosting? It's like, no, I'm not going to do it. But it's crazy. Yeah. So anyways, it's interesting, but I would say for the most part, I say 80% of candidates are just darling right now, and they need help, and they want our help, and they want to cut the noise, and we're here to do that for them.
I love it. And I love that you have a limit to your charity calls. Sometimes I struggle cutting those off. So,
Actually, my coach told me that because she knows I'll take calls all the time.
okay, so let's flip the coin. Let's talk about companies. How are companies having to adjust their hiring strategies for today's market in your industry?
Are they adjusting?
Okay, that was my next question. Or are they, and they're failing?
I think there's a lot of failures happening. But here's what's interesting is, again, I'm in San Francisco, and San Francisco is definitely used to a certain thing, right? They've been used to remote for quite a while, and now we have a lot of companies that want people back in the office. And as a recruiter, that's very difficult. That is like a very hard, and they're not cutting anything else that they want. So, for example, I've had this company who, again, I only take companies that have already done and struggled on themselves by themselves because I don't want to go there. But they have been looking for this person for 9 months. So my question is always, what's the cost of vacancy? Right? Like, what's going on? What can we give and take on? Because the give and take is not the office thing. They need every other week, every other day. And so I said, okay, fine. What else are we going to give and take on? Because obviously you've done this yourself for 9 months. You're coming to me desperate at this point. And I got to tell you, your team's looking. And can I tell you who? Absolutely not. But I got to tell you that not filling roles messes with retention. And I don't think companies understand that. And that drives me absolutely wild. So are companies adjusting? I don't really think so. I think they're still being operated by the C-suites, and whatever they want goes. And I think they're dying on their swords. I think the smart companies are the ones who adjust per, like, for example, there's certain roles that are used to being remote, like, period. And this is not a COVID thing. It's just they've always been remote. Like, and it is what it is. So I think exceptions need to be made. But the problem is also being inclusive. So how do you make exceptions and still be inclusive and still get the job done? And I think that the issue is companies aren't doing a good enough job at getting their employees attached to the business and ROI. And also, I think candidates aren't doing a good job stepping up to that table and say, hey, what's the company need? Because they're just getting laid off. Like, I think, sorry, totally tangented this one. uh, um, ca- Candidates, I think if a candidate is totally shocked by a layoff, then they weren't involved enough in the business. So I think that there's problems both ways when it comes to companies. So it's an interesting challenge. But here's another, I think, problem. Me addressing this question is because I work with smaller companies, and smaller companies think that they're the exceptions and that they're innovative and everyone will just run to their mission. And that's a problem too. So I don't think they're doing enough. Um, yeah. Oh man, I could literally spend hours talking about the problems of companies because here's just a quick thing. There's all these tools. The problem with the tools is no one has agreed on what the problem is. So how can we solve a problem if no one's agreed what the main problem is? So if you could ask a recruiter what the problem is, and you can ask a VP of engineering what the problem is, and they're going to say they're two different problems. I could ask an HR person what the problem is going to be a different problem. It also depends on the org and the industry. But I think the problem that AI is solving is not the main problem. I don't think it's sourcing that's the problem. Well, a lot of the problem is on hiring managers. And here's the thing. Here's why. And I'm not going to totally attack them because I'm my own hiring manager as well, right? But when people go into leadership, they're typically not trained. So typically, leaders are the power ICs. Power ICs should probably be left alone to do their overachieving stuff. And the people who actually want to manage and lead, because those are two different things. Manager and leadership is two different things. The people, that's a different personality. And so think about, they're not only not trained, but they're not trained on how to have a conversation about hiring. They're not trained on the shit that we go through. Like they're not trained on how to close a candidate. They're not trained on how to interview a candidate the same way every single time. That's hard. There's biases. I think that there's just so many issues, and they don't understand as well that when they change a search, how long that takes to recalibrate. Because it takes 2 weeks to build pipe? One change, 2 more weeks, right? So here we are with that. The longer the candidates doesn't hear from you, guess what happens? They shut down and they go somewhere else. Like, I think we have to address this more and more like dating, because that's exactly what it is. There's really no difference, right? So I think the problem is the lack of knowledge and training.
I agree with that. And I also think like the leaders of these organizations, they think there's a process happening because they willed it into existence. And we just think we're following it. But in reality, the process is, most of the times in the organizations I've seen, is the wild, wild west. Well, Bobby's successful over here. Brianna's successful over here. I'm not going to bother them, but this is how I want everything else to go. Process is a whole nother like tangent I could get on for hours.
Oh my God. Well, let me tell you one, and then you can tangent and tell you how you would have fixed this one. I got to go in for you. This company wanted to hire 6 people and have them on board all within 6 weeks. So position open, 6 needed to be hired and on board in 6 weeks. Here was my question. Great. How many people do you have interviewing? Because it's the same role, right? So I go, how many interviewers do you have? How long is your interview process? 6.5 hours. Okay. So like total from start to finish. Da, 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 da. And then how long does it take your team? Because then they got to grade and, and talk about the person, right? That was going to take 8.5 hours. So for every hire, it was going to take 8.5 hours. Okay. That's the first thing. They needed 6 of them. And then I was like, great, how's your onboarding process? And do you have plans for the 30, 60, 90 days? And then how's the hiring manager? Oh, and by the way, how much work do they still need to get done when they're during all these interviews? So think about that. So I had to actually say, let's do the math. Math wise, does this work?
No, the answer is no.
The answer is no. The answer is hell no. Okay. And no work. And then I also said, by the way, I'm not even talking about burnout. You're going to burn these people out so fast.
Mhm.
We're going to have other issues.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're going to feel that. The candidate's going to feel that. And they're not going to want to work there.
Heck no.
And then I said, and by the way, there's so many meetings on these people's calendars, like it's going to be really difficult. They said, nope, we'll come over everything, including their lunches. Wow. So ask me how that went.
Tell me you care about your employees without telling me you care about your employees. And I think that's where, we're getting more. I was in the tech space too. We're getting more to the idea, okay, let's have interview afternoons, or let's do all one and let's rotate people. I was always a big fan of, I'm going to set these interview times up. If you need this hire date this day, I'm going to schedule your interviews right now without even the candidates being in place, because I need to block your calendar because yours is sacred, because I can't even get a hold of you if I need to get a hold of you. So those are things that worked, but be realistic, people.
Yeah. So I said the only answer, in my opinion, is a hiring sprint, where you guys stop working
Yeah.
for 2 weeks and everyone's involved. You train more interviewers because this isn't going to work.
Did they take it? Did they say yes?
Nope. Nope. And guess how many people they hired?
I don't know how many people quit.
Well, okay. So obviously I couldn't tell them this. It was a 70-person team. Okay. Obviously, because I'm not a member of their team, I can see how many are looking. So every time I enter a client, I look to see how many people are looking because I want to know what's this company like, right?
Yeah.
So I looked before, there was a few. I looked again after this debacle, 32 out of the 70 are now open to work. And nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about what not hiring or hiring wrong does to an organization. And there's only 3 reasons why companies fail, and well, hiring's one of them.
Okay. I have 3 more questions. I want to get to these. I think we could talk for hours. So tell me, as you were looking to scale your firms, right? Especially a lot of the listeners are that small to mid-size company, and they're looking to scale more. What's the most valuable lesson you've learned about building and scaling a recruiting firm?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I learned this from someone. So, okay, first of all, always chase someone. Like as an agency owner or business owner, chase the person or company you want to be like or you want to beat essentially. So, I always had that company that I wanted to beat. They started before me, they were bigger than me, they had brand recognition. So, I eventually reached out to that person and I was very honest. I said, "I want to beat you one day. Tell me what you would like, tell me the real, like, let's have a conversation." And he actually did. He actually had a conversation. And I would actually do the same. Someone reached out to me, I would tell them the same exact thing. So he said, "You're still contingency, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. I love contingency." He goes, "You can't scale more than 15 people." And I tried to prove him wrong, right? So I did get up to 23 at my height, I believe, but I will still tell you today that a medium-sized company, a 6 to 8 person team runs the best. So my advice to those mid-sized companies, if you're contingency, okay, is either you have a different business model for other half of your team, or what's probably happening is you got to cut the people who are not being efficient, because what tends to happen is the bigger you get, the more of a fat cat you get. And you're paying for things. Now, here's the thing, as a business owner, naturally, the more people you have, especially on LinkedIn, oh, look how much cheaper my seats are. Oh, look how all my tools are cheaper because I go to Costco now, right? But it's fake, So I lots of times will ask an agency, okay, tell me, who must you have on the bus? Like, who, if your entire team gave notice today, what 3 people would you literally lose sleep over and give everything you have to keep them? And lots of times they don't have anyone on the team that they feel that strongly about. Or maybe it's 1 or 2 out of 10. So I go, great. These 2, you harness. The other ones, maybe they need a pip. Maybe they're not on your bus. So I think the allure of having a bigger team might feel like is maybe an ego thing. Or maybe it's oh, the more people I have, the less I have to work. I don't know. But I will fight that if you're contingency, or unless you have really good people that do biz dev, because here's the thing, that's another problem. Normally the owners are the only ones that do biz dev really well.
In those small companies, absolutely.
In those small companies. Yeah. I feel like I trained my people really well, but at the end of the day, I was one of the ones that could do it better. So most valuable lesson was don't scale just to scale. So I had at any given moment 50 clients. So I was like, I'm leaving money on the table. I can't even place enough people. Da 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 da. So naturally, you think I'm gonna grow, and you don't put a microscope on everything, everyone. You just figure growing is the way to go, and it's not. It's making sure you're a well-oiled machine. So don't grow just to grow.
How do you measure success in an organization like your own beyond placements?
I actually would, I had a tally game, and people would get rewarded for offers and activity. And when I say activity, here's what I mean. They would get rewarded for bringing in new clients and delivering someone that they wanted to talk to within 48 hours. That's a reward. They would get rewarded for on-sites, and that's the final round, right? In my opinion. And then they would get rewarded for offers. They never got rewarded for deals, actually. I didn't because they got commission, right? So I actually never rewarded people in addition to closing deals. Now, what I did do though, when it came to deals, is I rewarded the team. So if every team member closed a deal that month, the team got a massive prize. Whether it's like we all took a day to the spa or whatever the hell it was, right? But so I wanted to make sure that we operated as a unit, because I remember when my coach told me this years ago, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And she's like, if not everyone can close a deal every month like you expect, then you're not strong. I was like, ouch.
It hurts, but it's the truth.
It hurts. Actually, she did something with me that was very hard. She had me send over the numbers, right? The numbers of everyone's, the activity, the deals, like all of the stuff, right? She took off the names and reworked them and then share screened and said, who are we getting rid of? Ouch. I did not like that session. I cried in that session actually.
But was it pretty eye-opening? Did you
It
anticipate the people you were picking?
it was very eye-opening, and it was very sad for me because, I do also value, um, culture fit, or culture ad, I should say. It's a culture ad, where it's like maybe they're the first ones to help, or they're always pumping people up, or stuff like that, or they're like the quarterback. So I ended up having someone who was so good, who wasn't a great sourcer, was okay with clients, but for some reason their mind, the way it worked was they could see a candidate and know exactly where they're supposed to go at any given moment. And they just had a gift for that. So I actually thought of a commission structure for that person to do those things, because we had such a big operation that things were getting lost left and right. So it was almost like they were quality control.
My last and final question, just because I like where your brain goes. What is one prediction you have for the recruiting industry that might surprise people?
That the tools are going to die down and the humans will win.
I 100% agree with that. We just were at Staffing World last year. The amount of vendors this year compared to most or past years were through the roof. And there was a huge handful of AI only tools.
I think that's going to die down in like a really big way. Um, so it will be interesting. Like I already see fatigue from people. I mean, even think about just doing demos on how long stuff that takes. But I think what's interesting, and maybe these companies will win, is that how do you train your team on something, but more importantly, how do you get them to adopt it and actually stay? So what I have seen, and I think will continue to see, because I think it's the only way tools will still see the light, is if they cut the year subscriptions. Because I think the recruiting world and the TA space, internal and externals, are tired of signing contracts with companies that won't work with them. I mean, at any given moment, companies have to scale up and scale down, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And so having just those costs just because is a really hard detriment to every company. And I think that if those tools don't become more flexible, they'll die faster.
You have anything else?
I
Like I didn't, I asked,
don't-
I mean, I have more questions, but do you have like any, like one other piece of advice to anybody listening?
yeah. So I mean, I think I've said it with the fundamentals. But here's what's cool about this industry that I think a lot of people forget is the amount from going from zero to hero in this industry is essentially on paper easy. Okay. But it's a lot of work. So can you go from making, 50 grand to making 200 in 1 year? Yes, you can. But is that easy? Is there an easy button? Hell no. Hell no. So I think that is my advice, is that if you join programs or you join coaches or you join whatever, and anyone ever says that, they're completely full of shit and they just want your money. And I think what bothers me, and from maybe a human being perspective, is there's so many programs out there. Like I have people come to me and say, "Can you help me? I just spent $10,000 and this person and it didn't work." I'm like, And it's so sad. It's so sad. So that first and foremost really bothers me. Second, also when it comes to appearances, I think here's something that helped me in my world. You can go on LinkedIn and you might see, oh, I'm killing it. I'm doing so great. You don't really know what's going on. So my advice would be to never compare yourself to anyone or anyone else's journey. Okay. Like I get asked all the time, how did you do this? Right. I never took no for an answer. And again, it goes to me, I did not care. If someone told me no today, I didn't care. Someone tells me no the next day, I didn't care. I just found the one yes. I just kept looking for like the yes. I just kept looking, like people were like, this isn't gonna work. You don't have your degree. This isn't gonna work. Let them say that. So you stay on your journey, I think is really, really, really important. Are there a lot of people talking about their experiences? Sure. I mean, we're here talking about my experiences, and hopefully some people can take stuff from this. But this is my journey. So the thing that helped me with my coach was this: you have to think about the 5 people you surround yourself with. Are you the worst of the pack or the best of the pack? The trick is you want to be the worst of the pack. And this is bad terminology. This is definitely, I'm not setting this up correctly. You don't want to be the worst, but you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like the house. Like you want to be the ugliest house on the cul-de-sac. So then when they sell, your prices go up. It's the same logic. So a few years back, I really took a hard look at who I was surrounding myself with. And I think that that's a really big deal. And this is not just business wise, this is personal wise. This goes with all of that. So my advice there is don't think you owe anyone anything. Don't compare yourself to anybody. I actually smacked my mom's hand the other day. She was in town and my son is in sports, and she was like, oh Diego, did you look at that guy and like were you jealous that he got a hit? Said something along the lines of that, right? And I was like, we don't compare. We just don't. It's like, who cares? All we care about what we do. And I think the biggest thing too is every single day is a different day. Like I work out in 5:15, right? Today I killed it. Yesterday I didn't, but that doesn't mean I didn't give my 100%. My 100% is different every single freaking day. And I have to show up for that. So as I tangent all this stuff, show up. Just show up, have a good attitude, and put your head down. Like, don't get in the midst of all this shit. Don't start reading everyone's things. I actually got it so bad that so after I sold my business, by the way, I got imposter syndrome really bad. So no one talks about, which is another podcast, Courtney. No one talks about what happens after you sell. Everyone's always like lifting you on their shoulders. Woo, you did it. You exit. How'd you exit? But no one asks what happens to you as a human being afterwards.
I love
So
that something to think about. And honestly, that is a big part of our industry.
yeah. So your definition of success has to change throughout your journey. And no one told me that. So it's like you have this your goal and your mega goal. What if you hit your mega goal? Now what? Right? Right. But so it's like you have to have already shifted before that happens. You have to keep changing your goal when it happens. And then I was asked the other day, hey, you know what? I'm not having a good year. I keep thinking about this mega goal I had in mind, and I'm not even close to that. I feel like I'm shutting down. Well, guess what? Sometimes your goal has to change the other way too. You're not always having to push forward. Sometimes you got to take a few steps back, and you have to be okay with that. Because otherwise, you're just going to tumble down into this, bottom low of awfulness. It's really hard to get back up, but you can. And so sometimes shouting and saying, that's why I'm really honest about, I've had some lows, really honest about it, because people again are comparing. It's like, look, hasn't been all rainbows and, and roses and all of those things. It's been really freaking hard. I've absolutely, and I think if an entrepreneur does not admit to this, they're totally lying. I have been in the corner bawling my eyes out. Okay. Like, you have to. And if you haven't done that, you haven't pushed yourself enough. And something that actually my old business partner told me that I always think about is if you're not uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself. And so get very comfortable being uncomfortable. Like that's the thing. I wake up every day and be like, all right, I look at my schedule. Does my schedule make me uncomfortable? If not, guess what? I better go find something that makes me uncomfortable.
Such good pieces of advice, such good self reflection, and the concept of it's your own journey. I love that because no one knows where you are, what you are, and the cadence that you're in except you.
Yeah, people are. This is so funny. People are like, "Could you give me advice on how to rock like a conference?" And I was like, "Actually, no, I hate conferences." Like I suck at conferences, but they just assume I'm this very outgoing and again, I am very outgoing. I do like to talk to people and stuff like that. But put me in a freaking conference room and I'm like, where's the bar?
They're exhausting. I'll tell you. I just
They
came back from
they
one
are.
last week.
They are exhausting. And it's like the rule is you're not supposed to really ask them what they do first. And I'm like, aren't we here for that? Yeah. Anyways, don't even get me started. But yeah, so
I think we have 3 spin-off podcast posts today just from our conversations. Thank you so much for taking the time with me. I loved this. I loved kind of where we went and really talked about your vision, your expertise, your journey, which it's really clear you have a passion for the industry, commitment to innovation. So thank you so much for being here today.
yeah, thanks so much. Sorry I tangent so much, but what you're asking me is so like thought provoking, and there's not always like one answer that I'm like, I don't know. But you're right. I could talk to you probably all day long. You can get like your full year's worth of podcasts.
I love it. It's amazing. And until next time, because we're going to do another one at this rate. So
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.